Welcome to Replatform TV, the YouTube channel for the popular Replatform podcast, available on all popular platforms including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Hosted by myself, Paul Rogers, and fellow experienced e-commerce consultant James Gurd, we'll provide regular deep dives into important e-commerce topics with practical advice for getting results and improving your site performance.
So today's episode is going to be on improving the add to cart user experience for your e-commerce store. For those of you who are new into e-commerce, this is when people are going into the site, finding the product, whether it's on a product list page or the product details page, which is predominantly where people will add to bag for most types of product. And they click on add to bag. What then happens? How does your site treat that customer journey? And there are lots of different ways of doing this. So if you kind of like background facts and trends, the average add to bag rate in the UK and in the US are broadly similar, 4.17 and 4.19 from the latest stats I've seen. A good stat is Shopify sites, the average add to bag rate is 3.93%. So on every site, there's always an opportunity to improve this. And this is where testing the user experience comes in. There is variance amongst different categories. So home furnishing sites have an average add to cart rate of less than 3%, whereas beauty sites achieve almost 7%. Some sites have over 10%. So you really need to check your own metrics here. According to Baymard Institute, and Baymard Institute aggregates lots of cart abandonment stats from around the world, from big vendors like Salesforce, for example. The average cart abandonment rate in e-commerce is 68%. And while many abandons are quite natural, for example, somebody who is not yet ready to buy or who's added to basket but wants to do comparison shopping, many of these abandons are also due to poor user experience and failure to address common barriers to purchase once somebody has made that commitment to clicking on ad. The user journey when doing the add to basket plays an important role in this, and nudging people from a product journey into a checkout to speed up that process and also minimize the cognitive effort. So the effort somebody has to go through in order to be able to then complete their basket and their checkout. So in this episode, we're going to look at common ways to increase add to cart rates and deliver a smoother user experience based on projects we've worked on, and also from learning from other people we know in the industry who've done a lot of testing in this area. So Paul, from your experience, what are the biggest shopper frustrations in this area?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I guess some of the biggest ones that I've seen is processes not making certain things clear. So things like the timing of adding a promo code or the positioning of a promo code, all of that kind of stuff. I guess unnecessary steps as part of an add to cart journey as well. So kind of constantly being shown different recommendations that maybe aren't relevant as well. And that relevance is another one I'd say that can add friction. Not a kind of another one that I've seen a lot on client websites and generally is kind of different experiences as well. So I was working with a client recently, and we were like looking at areas of their site to improve, and they had kind of 3 different processes for progressing through to the cart and checkout, and it was dependent on whether you already had an item in your cart, and certain products showed product recommendations, certain ones didn't, and it didn't really think about it wasn't really consistent. So those, and I'm sure there's loads of others around kind of from a kind of usability perspective as well.
Excellent. So let's fire through our top 10. I'll kick off this week. So my first one is direct to bag. So this is when someone clicks add to bag and you take them straight into your shopping cart page. You don't have any in-between user experience. It works really well when the average items that you sell is less than 1.5. So I've seen sites where the average items per order is like 1.1. And actually taking people straight into the basket and reducing the steps can actually increase conversion rate better than trying to do lots of in-between cross and upselling. It can be it suits well to high-ticket considered purchases. I've seen it work very well in high-end jewellery. The aim here is get shoppers straight into the basket, where that basket can push people into the checkout. You can also, if you're worried about missing out on cross and upsell opportunities, you can use basket pages for doing cross and upsell and testing it there. The most important thing here is ensuring there's an easy access to continue shopping link in the basket. If you put someone straight in there, but they do want to go back, don't make it really difficult for them to do so.
Great. And then my one is kind of standard product recommendations once you've actually clicked the add to cart button. So the V&A and Sunspell are 2 examples that I've referenced here. And Vivo Life is another one that I thought was really good. And essentially, these would be a single click once you've added to basket to then simply add additional items. So usually accessories, but I've seen people do it quite well with kind of more cross-sell items as well. Again, as you say, dependent on kind of the average cart size and price point and things like that. And then dependent on kind of the pop-up and what you actually and the options you have within that pop-up, and I'll come on to this a little bit on my next point. You could bypass the cart and go straight to checkout, and that's worth testing as long as you've got essentially the right options available within that overlay, and you then continue to have certain fields within the checkout itself. And then from a kind of UI UX perspective, there are some good, so Bowden's a really nice example that James has referenced here, and Sweaty Betty as well. And then it's worth considering a kind of machine learned approach to this. And then another good example that James mentioned earlier is from ASOS, who do a kind of complete the look style kind of bundle purchasing option as well.
Yeah, and that works really nice on mobile because it's a one-click ad. Some sites frustrate users by making them click into each individial item within the bundle, whereas this is the obvious one, which is add it all at once. Yeah. Cool. So my next tip or example of the UX is interstitial pages. Now, this is an interim page that sits between, your product page and your basket page. And the aim of this is by creating an in-between page, it gives you a larger canvas on which to do merchandising. So you can display different types of cross and product recommendation upsells. So it could be other customers bought, popular, trending in this category, related, like you name it. So Amazon does this very well. They've done a lot of tests in this area. But a couple of brands who I know and have spoken to personally on this, who tested an interstitial page versus doing standard cross and upsell on the product page, it's Love Honey and Navabi. So Love Honey, adult toys and clothing, and Navabi, plus size clothing retailer. So they found that approach worked better than other UI treatments. So something to consider. Doesn't mean it's going to necessarily work for you, but you need to test these things to work out if it could add value. And even does it add more revenue through increased basket size, even if it has a slightly deflationary impact on conversion rate.
Great. And then my next one is cart drawers and push carts, or there's various other kind of terms that people use, but this has been a big trend over the last couple of years, particularly with kind of some of the high growth direct consumer brands. So some nice examples that I like. So Kettle and Fire is a really good example of a kind of cart drawer that kind of includes upsells and is also kind of fully featured in terms of functionality, which I'll come on to. And Retrieve is a really nice example. So they have like a single upsell that's quite nicely positioned and it's a bit more kind of persuasive. A-Day, Gymshark, and there's various others as well. And then generally these push carts, so particularly when we've done it, we've tried to kind of bypass the cart. So we would include all of the kind of core features and mechanics that you would need. So for example, the ability to update quantity, the ability to remove line items, things like gift messaging, potentially the promo code, dependent on the rest of the checkout and kind of how you position that and where you have that. Also, a best practice that most examples have is a free delivery counter, so like a progress bar, and then dependent on the value of your cart, it would then show that you've activated or need to spend more for to get free delivery. The goal, I would say, and we've seen this perform well, is bypassing the cart page, like I said, so going straight into the checkout. And then on mobile, I'd expect this to be a full page rather than a kind of off-canvas overlay. And then another really good example that I like is Primal Kitchen, which has those kind of, it has really nice upsells, single-click upsells, but it also has single-click upsell to subscription, which is quite nice. And then it just has a drop-down for the frequency of the subscription. But I think that's quite a nice implementation, and that's an integration with Recharge.
Oh, yeah, they're definitely becoming a more popular UI pattern, that kind of draw panel that comes out over the page. My next one is the simplest of the lot, which is no transition on the product. When you add to basket on the product page, you literally update the bag. And the key thing in here is it's maintaining the user on product pages and in product journeys. And this suits retailers where browsing multiple products before completing basket is common, but also where they have really good AI/ML merchandising solutions delivering personalized product recommendations in the product page itself or on the main basket page, and they don't want to slow people down or interrupt the journey that they're in. So the minimum requirement here is there's a clear visual state change for the mini cart, so people know that an item's been added. A good example on desktop is where the item's added and the mini bag just scrolls down to show that the new product's been added, and then it goes back up and the person's left on the page that they were viewing. Examples of brands that do this: Marks and Spencer's in the UK and Atomic Skis are examples of this.
Right. And then my next one is kind of testing, I guess, so UI design testing. So one piece that I've suggested that we've seen to work is bypassing the checkout, but equally that's probably worth testing because dependent on your customer base, some people might prefer to go into the cart or have an expectation that they can do certain things within the cart. And also a lot of people might, or some people might use the cart to kind of compare items and change their basket before they then go on to buy, etc. Single versus multiple call to actions. So again, dependent on positioning and how you're handling that add to cart piece, you might have a call to action to go to the checkout and the basket. You might have a call to action to continue shopping. So that's also worth testing. And then also the positioning of the upsell. So I think this is a really important one and something that a lot of these kind of direct consumer brands are testing and really working on is the kind of upsells that are designed to increase AOV. So that Retrieve example is kind of rule-based with a single, quite specific upsell. And I've seen a few alcohol brands do this quite nicely as well. So if I'm buying a gin, they might upsell tonic, or if I'm buying a series of cocktail ingredients, they might upsell a mixer or a shaker. Same with protein brands as well. You should do it quite well. And I think that one single obvious upsell can often be more powerful and more effective than having a series of them. And we had a client recently who essentially one product worked particularly well as an upsell, and it was a mask, and that was getting a 25% add to cart rate. So in the end, they've kind of made that a lot more prominent, and that's worked quite well. And then also looking at how like the detail you're showing as well. So things like duties and taxes, things like or the line items, things like are you showing the whole cart versus a single item within the cart, potential offers, promotions that have been applied, etc. So all of that stuff is worth testing just to make sure that you've got kind of the optimal, the content you're showing is optimal to the user.
Yeah, definitely. I think key takeaways will be around testing on this episode. I mean, most episodes of, on what you should be doing to find the optimal for your site. My next one is quite simple but overlooked UI pattern, which is persistent add to cart buttons. So if you're on a product page and you've got a long page with lots of copy, or you've got lots of product recommendations, carousels below the main product, and people scroll down, making sure that add to bag is persistent. It's a common pattern. You see it on a lot of sites. AO.com have done a lot of testing on this. You see in mobile now, more people are pinning it to the bottom of the page where people are used to pressing the mobile commands. Simple, show the price, show the product name, and have an add to bag, and make it quick and easy so people don't have to scroll back up.
Great. And then my last point is, I guess we've kind of already touched on it. So before it was A/B testing what's being displayed, the next one is the journey. So some of those points are relevant in terms of those call to actions. But then again, it's probably worth testing cart drawer versus overlay versus direct, as you mentioned before, James, and any kind of alternatives. And then testing is really going to be the only way you can find out what's going to perform best ultimately. And also different retailers will have different results across these, and kind of, I think brands and retailers with an older demographic, for example, might expect to see a cart, whereas I think a lot of the D2C brands that are targeting kind of millennials and younger users, it's pretty common practice to have a cart drawer, for example.
Yeah, exactly. And an interesting one there is, having done some merchandising training with a lot of e-commerce people, I always show the online flower example of taking like Arena, Serenata, Interflora, and looking at how they do the add to basket journey, because they do fundamentally the same thing, but in very different visual ways and process ways. So my last one I'm going to pull out is about not obsessing about cross-selling products and thinking about value-added services, because sometimes offering something else rather than just trying to nudge people into buying additional items can improve conversion rate the best. A couple of examples. Electrical retailers like Currys, PCWellNail.com are very good at promoting things like appliance removal or recycling services. Sometimes this is free add-ons, sometimes it's like small fees additional in the basket. Watch Gallery and other kind of premium retailers have tested promoting finance payment plans for specific price points. They know the price point at which they're getting an aspirational audience who might not have the cash to afford it. Finance works better than trying to upsell them in that case. Things about promoting warranties and guarantees. Sometimes it's not about trying to get people to add things to the baskets. It's trying to reassure them in the quality of the service so that they don't get that kind of buyer's remorse later on. So lots of things that people can do. And another thing to make sure you thought through is visible customer service. So if you've got a live chat and help function on the site, is that persistently visible? So if someone gets stuck or is unsure and needs that reassurance, they can very quickly get into that chat service. Seeing that tested really well from various retailers, and it's helped to uplift checkout completion rates after people have added to bag. So those are the kind of our key points today to think about in terms of improving your add to basket experience and conversion rate off the back of it. Paul, what would be your one takeaway that you'd leave people with?
Yeah, so I guess I guess this does come down to testing again, but I personally have had really good results recently with that cart draw kind of experience. And I think that can work really nicely. It's really fast, works well on mobile. If you can bypass the cart straight into the checkout. And again, it will differ dependent on what you're selling, but I personally think it's a really nice kind of UX, and they've been proven to perform well recently. So I think that's worth looking at.
Yeah, fantastic. And mine is don't obsess over conversion rate at the expense of all other metrics. Conversion rate is important, but actually your revenue opportunity could be higher with a lower conversion rate if you do some really smart merchandising around your add to bag and into checkout transition. For example, smashing your average order value, even if you take a tiny drop in your conversion rate as a result of it. And I know some people who've tested interstitial pages who found that is the net result. A couple of resources recommend having a look at. Databox have got a really good blog on 31 ways to improve add to cart rate, and NN Group, which are like kind of performance monitoring specialists, they've got a blog on adding an item to shopping cart. So go to their site to check out those articles. We'll link to them on our website post as well. And yeah, if you like this and you're interested in more tips on how to improve your site performance, please do subscribe to our YouTube channel. For more information on this topic, head over to replatform.fm for our audio podcasts. To discuss a project, or if you'd like to chat about any of the topics covered in this episode in more detail, please reach out to myself, James Gurd, or my co-host Paul Rogers via LinkedIn and Twitter. Thanks again for listening, and keep your ears peeled for the next episode.